call the member for Durack.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to the Voice to Parliament referendum in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper.
The member has the call.
I'm very proud to represent the second largest Indigenous population in Australia. The disparities between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians are particularly stark in regional Western Australia, which is why I am particularly concerned about the government's approach to Indigenous affairs. The Albanese Government promised everything with the Voice, yet it's been more than 4 months now since the referendum, and we are still waiting for the government to announce or indeed to deliver its Plan B. The referendum didn't just cost Australians $450 million. Sadly, it also left many Indigenous Australians feeling rejected by the rest of the country. And you can't blame people for feeling that way, Madam Deputy Speaker. After all, the Voice was presented as the only way forward. Who can forget that Voice ad that told that young person that without the Voice that they simply weren't going to make it, or that they have no control over their own life, or that there is no hope? What a disgraceful thing to do. It is apparent to everyone that things need to change. And we saw from this year's Closing the Gap report that we're not meeting our targets. In fact, only 4 are on track and some are heading in the wrong direction. But this is not due to a lack of resources. A lot of money is effectively being wasted on Indigenous affairs, and I believe we do need an audit into spending. This would be an important step to understand where government resources can be better used. We need to look at where efforts are producing positive outcomes and to stop funneling it into places where it is not working. Quite simply, the status quo cannot remain. Next, we must support the next generation to reach their full potential. As was often noted during the Voice campaign, it is more likely for an Indigenous young man to go to jail than to go to university. We need to ensure that Indigenous youth stay engaged with their education, that kids stop having children. Investing in diversionary programs should be an essential component of this strategy. But importantly, we must ensure that Indigenous children are growing up in a safe environment. Unfortunately, we know that far too many Indigenous children are the victims of abuse. A Royal Commission into Children Sexual Abuse in Indigenous communities will provide direction for the Australian Government and allow a targeted approach to combating this very serious issue. It's common sense that preventing trauma should be the #1 priority for this government. Another important factor is tackling drug and alcohol abuse. The cashless debit card was a game changer for vulnerable communities that were experiencing high levels of substance abuse. I saw firsthand the difference it made in the East Kimberley. Income management meant that there was money for school lunches, there was food on the table, rather than being used to buy alcohol and drugs for parents. The government's decision to remove the CDC resulted in an uptick in substance abuse and crime across the trial sites. I believe we need to re-implement the CDC, and we've seen the recent events in Broome with the introduction of further liquor restrictions brought in by the state government demonstrate that we should take very seriously the expansion of the CDC. This will assist the fight against family and domestic violence that is often fuelled by alcohol and drug abuse. Western Australian crime statistics show that family assaults are on the rise. In December, the rate of family assaults in metropolitan Perth was 70 per 100,000. In the regions more broadly, it was 247, and shockingly, in the Kimberley, it was 1,163 assaults per 100,000 people. This is unacceptable. On October 14, Australians overwhelmingly rejected the Prime Minister's untested voice model. This was not a rejection of Aboriginal people, and I want to underline that. This was not a rejection of Aboriginal people. All Australians want to see our Indigenous children have all the opportunities that non-Indigenous children have. Now, I acknowledge Indigenous affairs, it's not easy. But to make a change, real, lasting change, we need leadership and we need courage. And I'm calling on the government, get the courage, tip everything upside down on the table and start again, because clearly what we're doing is not helping the people that I represent in Durack.